Hello, everybody. I'd like to introduce you to Jen Christie from what3words. Thank you for joining us today, Jen.
Hi, thanks. Nice to be with you.
So, thank you very much. Please give us an overview of your business, what it does, and where it fits in the supply chain.
Yeah, so what3words is essentially a really simple way to talk about precise location. So what we've done is map the world into a grid of 3 meter by 3 meter squares and given every square a what3words address. So that's a simple combination of 3 words. They're fixed, they don't change. And what it means is that every square on the planet now has an address. So it makes it really easy for people like you and I to use a what3words address to communicate that really precise location. So it helps you find, share, and talk about those locations with anyone or anywhere in any kind of situations where you need to be giving that super precise location. And there's loads of different applications and use cases for it, which we've seen over the last sort of 10 years that we've been in existence. Logistics, obviously why we're here today, is one of those, but there's lots of other scenarios across mobility, navigation, breakdown services, emergency services, just kind of general wayfinding. So lots of people use it for lots of different things, but ultimately it's helping them with precise locations and getting to that exact point.
Thank you. And the next question I want to ask people is what brought you into the logistics sector? But with what3words, what aspects is it predominantly done and used for in the logistics sector?
Yeah, no, it's a good question. So when we think about the worlds of logistics, how we think about logistics, that's obviously about, in the kind of classic sense, that is getting goods and services to a location. So actually making sure that you're going to the right location really matters, is really key. So when we're thinking about logistics, we're coming at it from lots of different perspectives, but it's ultimately about can you or I make sure that our goods get to exactly where we need to get them. And for lots of people, if we even just look at the UK, but then you can think about it globally as well, lots of people do struggle with deliveries. So even in the UK, where we have postcodes and quite an advanced addressing system, delivery failures down to addresses still happen. A postcode, as we know, are great, but often they might take you to a certain area. A postcode can cover quite a large area. People who live in rural areas struggle loads. People who live in, I don't know if you've ever lived in a new build property, but people who live in new builds, notorious, can take a long time to get on address databases. And even if you live in, I'm trying to think of another example, like a building with different entrances. So in like cities and more kind of urban areas, the delivery entrance might actually be different to the car park entrance to the foot entrance. So actually being able to specify this is the exact place to go. So when it comes to logistics, we're thinking about the really in the last mile. Does a courier have all the information that they need to make a successful first-time delivery? So thinking about, can a what3words address be used, given by the customer, which will let the courier know exactly where to go, take them to that 3 meter by 3 meter square. And it's used in logistics by all different types of couriers, right? So kind of mentioned the kind of classic parcel deliveries and those driving kind of vans and those vehicles. It's used by couriers, same day couriers, bikes, obviously reliant on speed. So speed, making sure that they're getting there at the quickest possible time, right up to sort of the pallet deliveries. And again, when you're thinking in sort of pallets and bulky goods, making sure that those deliveries are going to the right location. So when it comes to kind of final mile, that's where what3words is used and becomes quite crucial to that journey. Is it being used as a delivery address and complementary to street addresses? And then there's lots of other different use cases that we see within logistics. So a lot of our partners also use it when you're thinking about the warehouse, navigating a warehouse, getting to the right locations, the goods in entrance, the goods out entrance, even the car park for visitors, you can use the what3words address there. And then it's also used in different fleet management tools. So we've seen that with some logistics companies where it's part of the fleet management tools, can be used for incident reporting. It's also used for breakdowns. So if drivers have incidents on the road, in the middle of nowhere, they can use the what3words address to get support. And also in out of home, so locker providers using it and being able to give customers a what3words address to find the lockers. So often they'll be in the backs of car parks. So kind of working across that whole ecosystem when it comes to logistics. And it's really, again, ultimately about where does precise location matter, and communicating that precise location. And then that's how what3words comes into it. And obviously the logistics and the couriers are one part of that. But it's also thinking about who else is part of that whole ecosystem. And it might be the delivery partners themselves, so those people doing the deliveries, the operations team, the drivers at that end, and really thinking downstream. And then it's working upstream from there. So it's who and what are the different touch points that good goes through. So it's thinking, well, what software are those companies using? What technology partners are they working with? These are all the different kind of partners that we work with in the logistics space. Moving right upstream up to the retailers themselves. So the people that are ultimately interfacing with customers and capturing that address information. How are they capturing that address information, and can they and do they want to be also capturing a what3words address? So when we think about logistics, it's really thinking about the whole ecosystem. Where do addresses matter? Where does precise location matter? And what are the different use cases and applications? But ultimately solving that problem of failed deliveries down to problematic addressing and poor location information.
Thank you. I really appreciate that. And how do you see the business sector you're in developing in the next few years?
I think, like, when it comes to the logistics space for us in particular, that's been something that has been growing over time, as we've seen lots of different applications and uses of what3words. So I see it only growing, and the usage of what3words within the logistics space growing as more and more carriers adopt it and more consumers themselves use it. I mean, we've got millions of users of what3words in the UK alone, and when we think about some of our partners in logistics, hundreds of thousands of people in the UK are using their what3words address, in their delivery apps, for example. So we only expect that kind of usage and adoption to kind of increase. And I think, like, as we see in particular more of the drivers towards efficiencies and the way that different tools and technologies are used to improve that whole experience, it's thinking about, well, what's the role that location information and what3words and addresses play within that, especially if we're moving to much more automation and AI-driven tools. Then the need for both what's the right way of saying that? The need for both human-friendly but also machine-readable information comes into play. And actually, again, that's where what3words is really helpful. Is that in an AI world, addressing can be quite a blind spot. But it's still a piece of data that still has to be processed and validated as it moves through the chain. And what3words can help a lot there. We're seeing lots of things like in chatbot environments. People using what3words as it is a very simple way to communicate a precise location. So ultimately, in what's happening is that a what3words address is converted into a latitude and longitude. So you're taking the kind of precision and the accuracy of a lat long, but making it human friendly, easy to remember, easy to share. So in this world where information needs to be passed on between humans and machines, a what3words address is really useful and really helpful to be able to be passed on in those systems and used as a location identifier, essentially.
No, thank you. And what are the biggest opportunities and threats for your sector, do you think, in the next 3 to 5 years?
I think, like, as I sort of mentioned in the previous question, AI, as we know, everyone's talking about it, and we're already seeing the impacts even over the last year, the sort of increased adoption that is happening in the space. And I think that will continue to drive it. But these sort of AI systems, they still inherit the same problems as human systems. So particularly, that's where we're definitely focused in our own development on our side is around, well, if we're thinking about that addressing infrastructure, particularly in a world of kind of, if I'm thinking about agentic commerce, for example, so people starting to shop via their AI agents, that's great. If that's the world that we're moving towards, but there's still a need to capture valid addresses in that environment. It still needs to be passed on and ultimately used by a final mile courier. So for us, it's making sure that for people who want to be using a what3words address, that are we building the right tools that make that possible, and are we working with our partners to kind of to enable that as well? And like I said, we work with a number of partners across that whole ecosystem. So for us, it's really thinking about how do we make it as easy as possible for what3words to be used across that entire customer journey, essentially. So we invest time and resource in the kind of partnerships and product development that helps that. So when it comes to the e-commerce side, it's thinking about the platforms and plugins that we work with and develop for. So things like Shopify. So it's do we have the right tools for a Shopify seller to be able to be capturing and passing that information on to their kind of carrier partners? Work with the kind of carrier management software and warehouse management software to make sure that information. So as each of these platforms themselves are also kind of looking at how automation and AI can increase efficiencies and improve their operations. For us, it's thinking about, well, how's that kind of address journey, and what are we doing in terms of improving geolocation technologies and tools and systems? So I would say, like, for us, like, that's definitely where we're focused as a business, and also thinking about that in our own apps and our own technologies, as well as the way that we're working and building with partners as well.
No, thank you. And also you can be used for, you talk about last mile delivery, but also on the reverse channel when you've got returns, people, micro sellers that want to put their parcels into networks, what3words can identify where, the parcel depot is or a locker is to drop it off. So no, that's really useful.
That's good, exactly it. And people still, lockers and out of home, definitely a massive shift in the market, and a lot more retailers looking to add that as a delivery option. And I think the key is that consumer expectations are just ever increasing. We see that. We saw that during and post COVID, with that sort of advent and an increase in e-commerce and everyone, and that sort of shift and explosion there. And then we've seen it more recently with this like push for out of home, both kind of coming from the carriers themselves, so them seeing the benefit of that, but also with the retailers also seeing it as an opportunity, because customers are also asking for it. It gives customers the flexibility. So I think the key thing is that whatever the solutions that can be optimized by these different automations and processes, is that it's making us all much more agile to those kind of consumer expectations. And like you said, out of home is another space where we have those partnerships and really thinking about, well, what do customers want and need, and then how are we all kind of working together to build those different solutions.
Yeah, no, thank you. And what are people in the sector not talking about that perhaps they should be?
Oh, good question. I think that when it comes to, I think thinking about my world and where I sit, I could there's logistics is obviously huge here. And I think when it comes to the partners that we work with and conversations we have, it's really about recognizing and acknowledging the inefficiencies that exist even within the last mile. And actually that's where a lot of the costs come in. And it can often be, when you're thinking about address data and the problems with address data, can be quite an invisible cost. So it's the thinking about the logistics side, it's often the operations, the ops teams, the drivers. It's those people who feel the frustrations. It's those people who see the frustrations. It's those people who realize the costs of that, because they're the ones that are unable to make the deliveries. They're having to do the redeliveries. That's all taking time and ultimately costing money. And eventually that cost might get passed up through to the retailer, but also the retailer, what they're getting is complaints and the cost of redeliveries, and they're seeing the impact of that, but they're not necessarily attributing that necessarily to the inefficiencies and problems in the mile. So it's really thinking about what gains can be made by optimizing downstream, but thinking about it across the whole journey, and actually thinking about how the costs that you might see and realize in the last mile can kind of be passed up. So that's where we're kind of sitting, and definitely where we're trying to work with our partners to show the value of address data through the whole chain. And that's also why we've also invested in our own. So we have in the e-commerce world, so we have what3words, as we talked about, so the ability for customer like you or I to add a what3words address to their delivery information. We've also invested in our own address lookup product, so we're able to validate all types of addresses, so that's street addresses, postcodes, and what3words addresses. So it ultimately makes it as easy as possible as a customer to use the information you have to give those partners the most accurate information that can help, like I said, drive those inefficiencies forward in the final mile.
Okay, no, it's great. And how do obviously, whilst you're not doing deliveries yourself, obviously with your postcodes and your what3words addresses, how do you see what you do affecting the green transition?
Yeah, no, good question. So it often comes up when people are thinking about, I guess, going back to that kind of last mile piece and the costs attributed there. We often discuss and talk about what3words in that context. So any sort of like tool or system or process that you're ultimately using that reduces the time spent in the kind of last mile, the last meter. If you're, if that means a driver isn't spending more time on the road, spending more time driving around, getting that delivery right first time, that has a carbon reduction, so carbon emission reduction. So often when we're looking at what3words as something that a business will be supporting and implementing, as much as there is the cost piece, the efficiencies that we gain there, they're also looking at it from an emission reduction perspective as well, and it's supporting their own kind of green transition, green targets, complementing all the other things that they are doing as well. Yeah.
What development in the sector has surprised you most in your career so far?
Yeah, and good question. I think you did ask me earlier about how I kind of got into logistics and into the space, and I didn't actually answer it, so I can kind of give you a bit of an answer now. But I haven't historically worked in logistics. I very much entered the space when I joined what3words. And also the beauty of working at what3words is that I get to work across so many different industry verticals and industry sectors. So logistics has been my focus for the last few years, but I've also worked extensively across e-commerce, technology, taxis and ride hailing, utilities, breakdown services and mobility. So I got to touch a lot of different sectors. And when it comes to logistics in particular, I think the what has been quite evident and what I see a lot is there's an appetite for technological change and innovation, but often the pace at which that can happen is very slow. So if you're still in warehouses, people are still, we still see paper being used. When you're thinking about deliveries, postcodes are still being used when there's other geolocation tools available. Carrier API integrations take months. When all of these things can be sped up and improved by the different tools and technologies available to us today. So I think the developments that, less of a surprise, but a welcome from my side, is that with the sort of increase in willingness to use these AI tools, many of which have been around for years now, but the willingness of a lot of these partners to now look at how these different tools and technologies can actually improve their operations. There's a much stronger appetite, and I would say that's been very evident over the last few months and the last year or so, is that the ability for a lot of these companies to now achieve the technological change and the innovation ambitions that a lot of them have had for a lot of the years historically. So I think that's been a pleasant surprise, I would say, and a pleasant development over the last few months, is that kind of appetite for being able to achieve the things that they want to achieve from a kind of innovation perspective.
Great, thank you. And the final question I'm asking everyone is, if you could speak to the Prime Minister, what would you ask them to do to help your business grow and flourish?
I think if I got the chance to ask the question, I think for me, it's really about the kind of support for SMEs in particular. So what we've seen at what3words, we work with businesses of all size, so SMEs right through to large enterprises, and kind of touch on what I was saying previously as well, but where we've seen that amazing growth and adoption and willingness to innovate and try new things has come from those SMEs, and has come from a lot of those early adopters of innovative technologies like what3words. And they're often on the kind of the keenest edge of trying to fix those inefficiencies at speed. And that's where something like what3words can play in. It's a small change that can make a big difference. And so anything that can support SMEs in that space to sort of support and build the ecosystem and ensure that knowledge sharing can go both ways, both from SMEs through to enterprise and vice versa. So anything that can help that sort of ecosystem grow is kind of a win.
Great. Okay. Well, I just want to say thank you so much, Jen, for your time and tell us all about what3words. I'm sure our listeners and viewers will really like it. Thanks so much for your time.